We're recording.
Fraser.
Yeah. How are you? Ready? All right. I'd like to call to order Town of Fraser Board of Trustees meeting on Wednesday, January. I'd like to call to order the Board of Trustees meeting for the Town of Fraser for Wednesday, January 22nd at 6 p.m. Can I have a roll call, please?
Katie Fisher.
Adam Quicklin,
Peggy Smith.
Julie White.
Louis Gregory.
And Brian Cirkvenik. Could I have an approval of the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes the minutes for January 8th, 2025 and resolution 2025-0106 3 Mile Plan.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, we'll move on to open forum. This is for business not on the agenda. If you'd like to speak, approach the mic. Let us know who you are, if you live in the town of Fraser or not, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Daniela Gosilova, 505 East Spruce Drive in Granby, invader of Town of Fraser board meetings. I've been here last 2 times and I touched a little bit on the recycling because that's the one thing that's common to all the towns. And I brought this green bag with lots of things that no one can really interpret in here. And it says composting. And the reason why I brought it is I was in the recycling facility in Granby, and this green bag flew over my head and landed up in the recycling bin. And people felt very comfortable what they were doing. And the reason why this is happening is because there is no compost in this or composting facility in this county. And lots of people come with lots of smart ideas, and no one can really interpret it. And on the backs, you have lots of signs that no one can read. And I think the easy way to go around it is to think about composting. There is lots of smart talks, lots of blah, blah, blahs about the greenhouse gases and stuff like that, but no one does anything. And recently I learned, I will share it with you, that town of Leadville, which is in 10,000 feet or 9,000 feet, they open a composting facility. And they done it with EPA grant for $3 million. It was publicly shared on one of the recycling meetings. So I think there are some opportunities, and I think town of Fraser is in the good position to step in out of all these towns. So that's why I brought it in here first, because lots of people think this way around this town and Winter Park. And I think you should be the one who, if something's going to start, the town of Fraser should start it. There's been lots of initiative in the past, nonprofits, but everyone got excited and always get the money, and then it fell out, and people are too busy. So it doesn't look like a nonprofit organization is the good way to go, because people are too busy doing what they do and start something new. There is no energy, there is no people, but people like to put the money into for the good cause. So that's my 5 words, and thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Is that something we can look into?
Yep, we're doing a
Compost.
compost study right now with the town of Winter Park. And it's good to hear about the Leadville plant. We can look further into that. Thank you. Wow.
Is it too cold to compost around here?
Yeah.
Yeah, a spare spot.
Could do it.
And indoors.
Okay, anybody else in the audience? Anybody else online? Doesn't look like it. Okay. So before we move on, just wanted to say a few words. In an attempt to maintain respect and civility among the people of Fraser, I wanted to address an incident that occurred at the town board meeting 2 weeks ago. Clark Lipscomb had requested an extension for his filing 2 of the village at Grand Park. Mr. Lipscomb was upset that the town staff was recommending denial. During the meeting, he became verbally abusive to staff and members of the town board. We have in place the Fraser Civility Policy, rules of decorum, which govern conduct at public meetings. These rules of decorum state in part that no person attending a public meeting shall engage in disorderly or boisterous conduct, including but not limited to applause, whistling, stamping of feet, booing, or making any loud, threatening, profane, abusive, personal, impertinent, or slanderous utterances that disturb, disrupt, or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of the meeting. Mr. Lipscomb's conduct during the town meeting was in violation of these rules. After the board meeting adjourned, Mr. Lipscomb shouted an insult directed at me. In an effort to be transparent, I admit that Mr. Lipscomb's behavior provoked me. Following his insult, I told him to go F himself. Although this was not during a public meeting, I know I could have responded in a more appropriate manner to a constituent. That being said, I will not tolerate acts of intimidation, insults, or bullying, whether it is to the town staff, the town board, or me specifically. I and the town board will still act fairly and justly towards every developer and every development application, regardless of past history. But we will not tolerate acts outside of standard decorum within these town board meetings. Thank you. So moving on to discussion and possible action. First up is Treasurer's Report. Lori.
Good evening, Mayor and trustees. I haven't seen you for a while. Hope everybody has a happy new year. Go ahead. Next slide. One more. Okay. Here we have your general fund reserves for December. I'm just kind of catching you up for 2024. The reserves you can see on the graph there. They did increase over December. We paid off some big projects in November, but then we started to do our climb back up. And also we received reimbursements from the grant submittals for Clayton's Court. So those always are very helpful to offset the costs. And we will be doing more grant reimbursements for St. Louis Landing. That will start, we'll gather all the information and we'll get some grant submittals in for the first quarter of 2025. So that'll be just a little bit down the road, but that's when we're going to continue with some more submittals. Next slide. I already read that part. Okay, here's your sales tax revenue. The revenue we received in January, again, is the December collection of November taxes. So that last dot there for December on the purple line is your November taxes. They were a little bit, it was higher than I kind of expected, but it was lower than it was below 2023. Kind of bummed about that. The one that really got me all worked up was if you see the November dot there that jumped way up, I don't know what happened in October, but rocking the taxes in October. So overall, for 2024, the sales tax revenue is 0.1% higher than 2023. Winning. So we came in pretty even, which I was really glad to see because we started out kind of really slumping there at a 3.5 down, but to come in at 0.1 above, we'll take it. Next. Yeah, you can go one more. I read that part. There we go. Short-term revenue. That cut off wrong. Oh, well. Your short-term revenue for November was less than in December 2023. For some reason that didn't print out quite right. I know I had it on there and it must have cut off the page. I apologize for that. So we had a great receipt of the October short-term rental taxes, but then the November really took a dip. It was about 22.59% less. So, but overall short-term rental stuck in there pretty evenly over the year. I don't have that total calculated yet for the whole overall 2024. But some surprising months. And then, like I said, November was a little bit of a surprise. I thought we were going to see a little bit more. Okay. Next. And then just that little review of the remote sellers. We did not have a great November for the remote sellers. It kind of was the same as the December and the November. Again, that's the October and November sales taxes. They just kind of stayed level. I anticipated remote sellers were going to be coming in a little higher for Christmas shopping, but it stayed pretty level. And so, yeah, the short-term taxes, it was still about 6% of total revenue on average. Any questions?
All right, thanks, Lori.
Thanks.
Okay. Next up, we have Mountain Parks Electric Incorporated update.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Megan Moore-Kemp with Mountain Parks Electric. I am here with our member relations manager, Erin Street, and our engineering manager, Susan Henderson. Virginia Harmon, our general manager, was called away to a family matter, so she sends her regrets that she's not here. And our operations manager is sick in bed. So, but we each have pieces of this presentation tonight. And I'm going to pause between each subject matter and give you a chance to ask questions. We really appreciate your engagement. Our presentation is based on the questions that we received from you and the things that you wanted to hear from Mountain Parks. So the first thing that you asked us is to describe our wholesale power provider and impact to service and rates. So as many of you are probably aware, our board 2 years ago chose to exit Tri-State, who has been the longtime power supplier to Mountain Parks. And Mountain Parks was a member owner of Tri-State. So we gave our exit notice 2 years ago. And February 1st, Guzman Energy will be our power supplier. So that is literally almost tomorrow. So pretty exciting. Our team has been working very hard to navigate that transition. We are ready. And a couple of reasons that the board at the time chose to exit Tri-State. They really heard from this membership that they wanted more flexibility specific to local power supply. Tri-State had a 5% what we call carve out. What that is Tri-State allowed Mountain Parks to self-supply 5% of their total wholesale purchase. Under Guzman Energy, we get up to 18%. So that really appealed to the board because they had met that 5% under Tri-State and had to keep saying no to members who wanted to participate in local power production. Guzman Energy will has also in that contract provided price stability. So we have a fixed rate contract for 20 years. And that price and rate certainty, we believe, will really benefit our membership. Power supply is our largest expense by a long shot. So to have price certainty is a really big deal for the cooperative. Guzman will meet our renewable energy mandates. We will be 80% renewable by 2030 through the term of the contract. The contract also made it possible for us to apply for grant funds that we've been awarded that we were not able to apply for through Tri-State. So that's exciting. Bringing more of the slice of grant funds to this territory, we believe is really important. And then just lastly on Guzman is they have a growing number of customers throughout Colorado. They serve a handful of co-ops in Colorado that have found them to be a good partner in terms of reliability and affordability. And they're headquartered in Denver. Any questions on that power supply wholesale transition? Yeah.
So Guzman, are they financing the exit fee from Tri-State, and what was the exit fee?
Is the exit fee public? Has it been published with FERC? It will be. Can I say what it is? Okay. So the exit fee is based on a FERC formula rate, and that was 77 million. And that's financed over the term of our power supply agreement. Guzman didn't finance it. The cooperative is paying for that exit fee. But with our stable rates that, that we have, it was also our lender.
Both of our lenders agreed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had never done it before.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
I have a question. It's not totally formulated. You said that you're going to be 80% renewable energy
By 2030.
by 2030. And then you also said that there's a cap on individually produced energy. Like if I had solar on my house at 18%, is that 18 within that 80 or is that on top?
It's an additive to that. And
Okay.
our rooftop solar, what we call net metering, does not count against our self-supply.
Oh, okay.
Proportionality.
That's Mountain Parks
Yeah.
Electric Generating.
Yeah,
not-
this is
not
purchase
individual
power
generating.
agreements.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Actually, you did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It blew my question apart. and
Okay.
That answer.
Okay. Next, you asked us about alternative energy programs and solar tie-in. So I touched on our carve out. That's the slide that we have up with Guzman. So we have a 20-year contract with Guzman starting February 1st, which allows us up to 18% of our total purchase from Guzman Energy that we can self-supply. We don't have to. Guzman's going to power us with our full requirements, but we have this optionality. And the way that the contract was negotiated was really with the thought of the membership in mind. We heard there was pent-up demand from members who were wanting to participate specifically in grant funding available that they could unlock to do solar arrays mostly, and also interest in microgrids, which are a critical facility backed up during a power outage by a solar and battery. So we can put on 5,000 megawatt hours in the first 2 years of our contract. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that looks like. And then the remaining contract years, we can put up to another 55,000 megawatt hours, resulting in 18% of our power supply. So that carve out, like I said, net metering, which is rooftop solar, does not count toward that. It's power purchase agreements that Mountain Parks will have with power suppliers. And that first 2 years is we're really trying to meet member demand for wanting to create projects. So what we're doing is a series of 3 RFPs for that power supply. We've issued our first RFP, and we have sent it to the town. Our priority with that RFP is to help members leverage grant applications and maximize community impact. So the size for that is up to a single system size up to 500 kW, but we're total in that RFP allowing 1 megawatt. So the intention of that is we don't want one member to take up that whole megawatt. We want, to provide opportunities for multiple members to participate. I welcome you to look at the RFP. It's on our website. And we're hoping to get some really great applications. These are our timelines for that RFP. February 13th, we issued the RFP just before Thanksgiving. February 13th is a notice of intent to respond. March 5th, we'll have a pre-application meeting. The actual application deadline is April 1st, and we'd like these systems to be online by December 26th, or excuse me, December 2026. And then just a little bit on our interconnection process. So that is applies to net metering. That's mostly rooftop solar in our territory. Mountain Parks has a pretty generous net metering policy. Most utilities in the state allow 10 kW on residents. That's the state statutory obligation. We are over double. We allow 25 kW. And then all of our interconnection process is regulated by the PUC and legislation, and that is all on our website for how to step through that. Any questions on that? And then I have a question for you. So it's on the slide. Do you have any questions about our?
So when
solar
you're
project?
talking about these smaller projects forming, a group to do this, are you thinking elementary school, rec center, Safeway, the wastewater treatment plant? Is that kind of stuff?
We're not contemplating that. That's really for our membership to contemplate. We had heard them, we have members who've said we want to be 100% renewable, or we want to make money by selling power. Yeah, so we're really looking to the membership to apply to us for what they envision. And we do have a price set, a ceiling price of an amount no greater than 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour plus applicable transmission costs. And that's on our website so that people know what they're, what's the marker. Any other questions on solar or alternative energy programs? Okay. And then we thought maybe we could get some information on the wastewater plant. We had heard about a solar system there.
Yeah, so we're looking at a 250 kilowatt solar array at the wastewater treatment plant to help power the new facility that was added to the plant a couple years ago. And it took a while to get in the dirt and compact it down to the point where we could actually have the ground structural integrity to be able to hold the different the array brackets that go into the ground. I know we've been trying to break ground on it for the last couple of years, but we keep running into some challenges with it. But I'm hoping that with the ground being able to have a couple of freeze thaw cycles that'll be compacted enough that we can actually put the array in it. Is there anything that you want to add to it?
Just that I saw you, Megan, and remembered that I owed you an email about this. I apologize. It was kind of crazy before the holidays when we started talking about this, but I'm going to work with Joe Fuqua, who runs the wastewater treatment plant, to connect with you about this and anything we might need to do in terms of permitting approval and all of that good stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's our concern, that our system can't just accept any type of interconnection. It's really important to meet with our engineering team and make sure we can take power at that location based on our distribution system. Do you have anything to add? to that, Sue?
250 kilowatt level, it does meet a specific requirement on our interconnection that's much more involved. And it's not eligible for our net. metering.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Thank you.
Michael, is that array a JFOC project or a town of Fraser?
That's the JFOC project.
Okay.
And we're using your loan and repayment program. Yep, he
Okay,
knows what I'm talking about.
so that program is, has been sunsetted.
Okay,
So we should probably discuss.
we'll discuss.
Okay, I don't know what JFLC is.
JFOC is the Joint Facilities Oversight Committee,
Okay,
3 different sanitation districts that own the
Okay.
plant.
thank you.
The town of Fraser is the managing entity of the JFOC.
Got it. Thank you. Anything to add? Okay. Okay, shifting gears, you asked us to speak to EV charging stations, charging station initiatives and programs. So currently, Mountain Parks initiatives are focused on education and outreach. One thing we're doing is we're hosting a quarterly EV stakeholder group. Sarah's on our invite list for that. Really the purpose of that is just for regional partners to share what they're doing. A regional approach to electrifying transportation is really important. So getting everyone talking about what they're working on, what questions they have. We have a meeting next week on that. We also helped with the Northwest COG grant, which was a regional fast charging grant. We helped with placement of chargers and a letter of support. Safeway is one of the locations. I haven't heard on the status of that grant. Have you?
I haven't either, and we're
Okay.
still working with Safeway to get final confirmation. We went ahead and submitted them as our preferred location, but they were being sold and weren't being sold, and so we could not get the approvals, like the final approvals that we needed, but
Thanks.
the local store was interested.
Thanks. We host an EV ride and drive event. It was in Winter Park this year. Next year, we're looking to partner with the YMCA, Winter Park, potentially Fraser, and Drive Clean Colorado to kind of have a bigger, splashier ride and drive for 2025. Get more cars there, get more people. And then on our website, we have a electric vehicle education tool, which is an interactive calculator to help inform members on their conversion to EV. It has all the tax credit information. It has, you can put in what your car is and converting to EV. So really the education piece around electrifying your car. And then you asked us EV charging location considerations. And Sue, do you want me to tackle this one? Okay. So Sue and her team looked at where we have some headroom from a capacity perspective. Also, 3-phase power is really important specifically for fast charging. It's essential. So she developed a list of potential locations based on our system, which she has listed there. Do you want me to read them? Okay. Yeah. No, okay. And then just as a reminder, that, we can beyond like a basic identification of where we have capacity and 3-phase power for actual design work to move forward, that does come with a fee. If we're staking and designing the location of an EV charger. And then in general, large scale EV chargers they're costing around $75,000 to $100,000, which you probably all know. You have them. They're expensive.
Megan, I've got a quick question.
Yeah.
Has Mountain Parks discussed at all about adding a branch for EV charging station maintenance, repairs, things of that nature?
Oh, like we would do the O&M for EV chargers?
Yes.
Not to my knowledge. We discussed it. Yeah.
It never hurts to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there could be some more local interests, public and private,
Okay.
if that were to be the case.
Yeah.
And the town could help support and provide resources for grant opportunities, but the maintenance is a real thing.
Mhm.
And it takes time, and it takes, Sarah managed our EVs and our charging stations, and yeah, when they go down, it's terrible for everybody, especially when somebody's counting on that station being
Yeah,
in use. So just a thought there.
thank you. Any questions on electric vehicles, power supply, solar, before I hand it over to Sue to talk about operations and reliability? Thank you.
Thanks.
Great. As Megan said, I'm Susan Henderson. I'm the manager of engineering at Mountain Parks. And thanks for having us. So I wanted to talk about some of the operations and reliability updates from Mountain Parks and what we're doing. You know, as you can see from California and a lot of other instances that we see going around the US, wildfire mitigation is a high priority for Mountain Parks. We've already experienced the second largest wildfire and in our area, and that we don't want to see another one start. And if especially by our equipment. So we have been doing a lot of things. We've been installing a lot of technology to help with that wildfire mitigation. We also have a lot of grant funding. So like Megan referred to, we are really looking into some of the grant funding. We had a great opportunity to have about 8 projects that fell underneath a FEMA wildfire mitigation program that we're trying to get installed within the next couple of years. We've been working very close with the Department of Homeland Security Energy Management, along with FEMA. So that's the Colorado State Board that we're working with for some of that funding for about 8 projects. And it comes out to be about $8.5 to $9 million worth. So it's a huge step for us. And then we're taking measures and talking along with fire departments and other areas and trying to figure out what we can do and how we want to set some of our system parameters based upon what they're seeing. So some of these next talk about what we're doing. We're converting a lot of the overhead power lines to underground. Any new installation into residential is underground. So we do look at that, but that's really nice because it is away from the brush, it's away from the trees. You know, it's underground, so it's fairly protected. We do, before you change slides on that one real quick, we do understand that Fraser wants to work with us on trying to convert overhead to underground in the city. We're more than willing to talk to you about that. There's some avenues with the franchise agreements and things of that nature that we can talk about. But it would take a substantial amount of time and quite a bit of funding, but we're more than happy to sit down at the table and come up with a long-term plan with the town to do that. All right. So another avenue that we're doing, you can see this, especially if you ever go and drive over Wolf Creek Pass way down in the south. They have Hendrix cable up there. It's insulated wire. It's very condensed. It's a small footprint. And it has a lot of strength to it. So if a tree falls on it and stuff, that it can hold it. It has a lot of good advantages. And we do, Mountain Parks does have some Hendrix cable up across near Smith Creek. So that's pretty good. Hendrix tree wire, that's an insulated wire that we're looking at and we're doing in high wildfire areas. Again, it's not an exposed conductor. So that adds a lot of protection for wildfire. We're putting out smart devices. So you'll see later on that we've installed some fiber backbone, but these smart devices, we now have the capability to put, you know, I think they're beautiful beauties in the eye of the beholder, some of the equipment on the poles. But what it really does is it allows us to have a lot of system awareness. So we have some communications to that. So we can see what part of the systems are open, what they're doing, what we're acting. It also allows us to do it internally at our
control center in our offices, which is really a great benefit that we haven't had in a lot. There are a lot of programmable devices, controllable. We have it in-house where that fiber is connected. We can control it, as well as being able to set some really sensitive settings in some of these devices. I'm here to tell you, if your lights blink, that's good, because otherwise you would have had a permanent outage. We do that on purpose for overhead lines. Most of those outages are very temporary. So we just blink the lines and let that clear. So we do that on purpose. But then this will allow us, if it does go out for a permanent fault, we can do that. We've been trying to do a lot of technologies that will allow us to respond much faster to the customer. So the next one is our AMI meters. So that is also, we read those electronically through our communication system, but it also has the ability to give us a last gasp. What that last gasp is, hey, I'm out of power, let the utility know. So we actually have the capability of knowing you're out with those meters. Prior to you calling, we still, advise you call if you're out for any amount of time. But we do have that. It also has a lot of disconnects, remote disconnect capability in there. So that's a technology that's coming. It's only on certain residential meters based on what your service size is. So it doesn't go up to, a large commercial building doesn't have it because the meter, it doesn't have the capability to have that disconnect in it yet. They're trying. So it's really good to have. We have a vegetation program. We do a 4-year cycle with all of our vegetation, and that's to prevent, the trees getting into our right of way. We also look at danger trees. If there's something that looks like it's going to fall over or something, then we make sure to clear that off as well. And then, coming in the future, we're working with some of the fire stations as well as the technology companies to install AI cameras for early fire detection. We've seen some success in that. And then my last one is not necessarily in wildfire mitigation or everything, but it is based on the reliability and operations of our system, is that we are, with the amount of growth that is happening in the Fraser Valley and Winter Park, with a lot of the growth that we're seeing, we will be coming forward with a proposal of a new substation with a transmission line that will go with that. That transmission line will be at most likely at a 69 kV. So it is usually under a lot of the concerns of most public. It's smaller in design or in sorry, I'm losing my words. It's smaller in profile than the 115. Thank you for holding with me for that thought. So I just like to say that, but that will help with the reliability in here and give us a different source of power. Right now, it's the one off of County Road 5 serves the whole valley up through Winter Park, and we think it would be better to have at least kind of 2 sources. So the fiber build out, this is one of the last slides. So the fiber build out, like I said, we've put up fiber. We have backbone fiber, which controls a lot of our devices that we have, those smart devices, controllable devices, giving us input back to our office. But we also have a partnership with Connexon Connect, and that's going to have the last mile fiber to the home so that we can bring internet to all of the residential and businesses, all of our customers. They started on the west side of our territories out in Kremling and Walden areas. And so they're planning to start installing fiber in that area next year. And then they'll be working their way east through our system to bring fiber to the homes. So we're pretty excited about that. And then I'm sorry, I did have one more slide, the plotting and meeting. So we have been trying to get with the towns and counties, and I think I've been talking to a few in the town already about our building standards. and that it's, it's really becoming quite a space issue for utilities to get in with a very small size units that are lot size, and with the removal of the front lots lines or the setbacks, we're really struggling to get our utilities in and work with the developers to make sure that we have plenty of space. It's a 10-foot space difference between any structure, including foundations, footings, and things in the ground, and that's for the safety of everybody. So we just wanted to come and remind everybody that those distances are there for the safety of the public. It's there for the safety of our crews. It's there for the safety of our equipment. We also do not allow landscaping around our transformers and switchgear. We need to get in them, and in the front of them, we need 10-foot space in front of those gear. So I just wanted to bring that up. It is a struggle. We are trying to work with everybody to squeeze everything in with the proper clearances. So the next is really a question for you, and this was a list that we got. The Fraser Parkway power line installation status and timeline. We're not really sure who we need to contact about that. We don't have a lot of information on that. And so we would like to get with somebody to learn what the plans are and what we can do to help.
So would we.
Yeah, so I don't even know is that the Fraser Parkway, the new,
From the
Road.
underpass with the railroad
okay.
around to County Road 73.
Okay.
Yep.
So we're more than happy to come and sit down with anybody you'd like to talk about that project, as well as, getting a game plan to underground facilities in Fraser.
We can set up a meeting for that.
Yeah, you'd be more than happy to. And then the last one I'm taking with Megan on, if you have any development or environmental goals for the town that we needed to know about, so that we can work those in our plans as well.
Nothing right now.
Well, we are here to, just call on us. We're available, and we're more than happy to talk about it if you have some. And I think
Great.
that ends is there any questions?
So the backbone, I understand, is in, and you've
That's right.
partnered. Are they going to be able to provide 1 gigabit of service?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that question.
So if you have existing Comcast, is there any way to switch?
I would assume that you could cancel your subscription with Comcast and go to Connect. I mean,
Well, internet's been a real problem. I
Mhm.
was at a presentation at the elementary school earlier this fall, and we wanted to show a 5-minute movie, and we didn't have enough internet at the
Yeah.
elementary school.
yes, we're all very interested. I know there were even Mountain Park employees who were like, if you need a test, we're more, but they are building out, my understanding is based upon the grants that they have in communities that are underserved first.
Mhm.
So that's why they're starting on the West Kremling side and Walden areas, and then they'll be working their way here.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Have a great evening.
Me too. Okay. Next up, we have Fraser Valley Distilling Business Enhancement Grant Amendment.
Hello, Mayor Cervenik, Board of Trustees, Sarah Catanzarite, Assistant Town Manager. The matter before the board is consideration of an amendment to the 2024 Business Enhancement Grant Award that was made to Fraser Valley Distilling for an increased amount of money due to the applicant's request based on larger project cost. So I'm just going to provide a little bit of context and background, and then if you'd like to hear from
the applicant. Barry is here. But in 2024, Fraser Valley Distilling was one of our business enhancement grant awards. They were awarded $7,500, which was the maximum award amount for the grant program in 2024. To go towards a new permanent awning over their outdoor seating area that is planned to help extend the season for their outdoor seating, as well as to increase their overall seating capacity for their establishment. They estimate that the project is expected to cost approximately $82,270 total. After this award was made to the project, the Board of Trustees approved updating the Business Enhancement Grant Program for 2025 to allow for maximum award amounts of up to $25,000 per project, with a total project budget of $125,000 for 2025. The program continues to require a funding match of at least 50% of project costs. Considering these changes and higher project costs, Fraser Valley Distilling requested consideration of an increase in their award from $7,500 to $25,000. Additionally, they shared that they may add permanent heaters to the awnings, making it more useful, particularly in the winter months, as well as chillier summer evenings. In fiscal year 2024, the grant program had $75,000 budgeted. $22,000 was awarded to 4 local business projects. Some funds were also moved from the business enhancement grant budget with board approval to be used towards the revamping of the explorefraser.com website and to provide DDA seed money. So at the end of 2024, $18,148 remained in the grant budget. The 4 businesses that were awarded enhancement grants include the Fraser River Beer Company. They received a little over $6,000 that they used towards their outdoor patio area. Winter Park Fraser Tire and Auto was awarded $7,500 towards new garage doors. Those have not yet been installed. Fraser Valley Distilling received their award, and then Camber Brewing was awarded $626 towards a stone retaining wall. All unexpended funds from 2024 will be rolled forward and added to the $125,000 currently budgeted for 2025 for the Business Enhancement Grant Program. As mentioned, new to the program in 2025 is that increased award amount of up to $25,000. There is a March 3rd priority consideration deadline, so there will be a competitive process. If funding remains after that deadline, it will be awarded as applications are approved on a rolling basis, so long as funding remains. We're anticipating there will be a greater applicant turnout given increased promotion of the program. We're working with the DDA to try to help promote that as well as through the town channels of social media and the website. We do ask that applicants are required to use the award in the calendar year that the award is granted, unless they provide a written request for an extension and that's approved. So town staff recommend the Board of Trustees discuss and determine if they would like to consider the request for an increased award made by Fraser Valley Distilling. Any action on this request can be taken via a motion by the Board of Trustees. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can hand it over to Barry if you'd like to hear from him about his request.
Let's hear from Barry.
Mayor and board, thank you for having us. More important than that, I'd like to thank you all for significantly increasing the funding for this program. I think there are 2 things I'd like to talk about in general, then get on to our project. When we met with the DDA consultants, which I had the opportunity to serve on, one of the things he told us is that he recommends during the early phases of the DDA to really spend some money on enhancing existing businesses and the whole business area. And that will help developing the new area. So I think to the extent that the existing projects, our project, if we're able to go forward with it, and other similar things will just make the downtown area much more attractive, not only to customers, but to new businesses. And when the Riverwalk District area gets built out, I think there's going to be a lot of competition for potential customers from Winter Park, like Arrow and from the resort. So that's the first reason I'm really glad that the board has expanded the funding of this. The other is I had a meeting with the mayor and town manager a couple weeks ago to better understand the plans of Winter Park in the resort. And their goal is clearly to build significant more housing, more retail, and have people come stay there, eat there, drink there, maybe take the new gondola to town. And I think to the extent that we work on our downtown, it'll put us in a very good position to attract a lot of those customers instead of just staying at the resort in Winter Park. So I think the program's really good, and then it gets to ours. So can you put up the picture of the roof? So right now we have a very small triangular roof. It's way over on the left-hand corner that just covers the fire pit area. So what we're looking at doing is having the new roof come right under that and coordinate with that and cover the entire patio. Right now we put up sunshades during the summer, and that helps to a large degree. But if you ever gone by there on a nice day, it is packed. We're very dog friendly, as very few places are. It's visible from the road, so I think it's a great way to get other locals and tourists seeing the activity that we have. The problem with it right now is, number one, when it's really hot and sunny, the sunshades don't do enough. Number two, when weather rolls in, people either can't go out there or they come in. And three, it's a very short season. So the cost that we were quoted by Stefan Builders is just to put the new roof in without any heaters and without vinyl windows. So those would either, we would either add to that or put it to another year. But I think first and foremost, it'll give us a lot more seating. As you all know, we have a lot of art events. They're completely oversubscribed. If we had the roof, we could put people outside and expand those greatly. The other thing is we get a significant number of requests for rehearsal dinners and small weddings. Because we have such a loyal following from locals and weekenders, we never close the restaurant for a special event. But we do rent out just the barrel room. If we have this, then we can extend special events out to there and probably have a lot larger rehearsal dinners and things of that sort. I think we have one of the best outdoor spaces in the valley. The one that was much better than us is Noble Buck, because it's bigger and significant part of it is undercover. With them not occupied right now, I think we have one of the best spots. And with this roof, I think it'll be a great spot. So I think this would be good for our business. I think it'll be good for the town. I think it'll bring a lot more people, and it'll just be another increment to beautifying the downtown. That'll make it much easier to attract new businesses when the Riverwalk area adds retail. And I think I asked you all, you're guessing it might be 6, 7, 8, maybe 10,000 square feet. So that's probably like 3, maybe 4 restaurants. No questions? Oh, I want to point one other thing out if I could. If we could look at the data on the drawings. We've been wanting to do this for 4.5 years. And with all of our other financial priorities, like building a new building, we had to buy a forklift last week. It's just been very challenging. And with this grant, and we got the grant in the fall, and we decided not to pull the trigger because it is a big number. With this grant, we will commit to going forward if we have a builder.
Questions for Barry?
So the grant, you're asking for is 25,000,
Yes.
and you got last year?
Well, 25,000 would include the 7,500. It wouldn't be in addition.
Okay, that's what I was asking.
I think what we're requesting is an increase the grant to the new maximum, given the magnitude of the cost.
I'm just wondering,
Sarah, I don't know if this is a question for you. How many other businesses are requesting grant funding out of the pool of money we have?
Well, so this year in the past, they've just been on a rolling basis. And we've typically had leftover grant money in years past. This year for 2025, we're trying out a priority deadline. So that would be March 3rd. So we will know March 3rd how many apply by then. And then if we don't award all of the money at that time, businesses can continue to apply on a rolling basis so long as funding for the year remains.
So
I mean,
Barry, I'm
I guess
curious.
given how much money, and I don't know if you made that public, but the town has given a lot of money to this one business. I'm concerned about diversifying, those funds to other businesses that are just getting started. It seems like a large grant for one business that's already gotten a lot of,
We're only midway incentivizing the construction of this building. I mean, you said that you've been planning this for 4.5 years. That's
I know,
not a-
we have architectural drawings, we haven't done anything.
But that's a year and a half after it was built. You have a 10-year incentive in place that's, to me, it looks like it's about $50,000 a year. That, in my mind, that's what should be used to, I mean,
I think it's about-
I mean, we give you a bargain sale on the property. We're 250,000 into incentives. We have another 250,000 estimated to go. If we do a grant to 25,000 a year, it could be multiple grants. There's no rules to our grant program, and
No,
I'm
you can-
really concerned about this, that in the end, we're setting a standard that we might have $500,000 to $1 million per building that's expected
Well, let's
down here.
address that. I think that's a great question.
Yeah, please.
Okay, first of all, Mike and I have gone back and forth. I think that number's incorrect. The number's probably gonna be over 10 years, about 330, maybe $350,000. Not 5 years.
Well, it's a projection. but-
Well, it is, but I think there were some numbers included that I would love it to be that number, but it's not going to be. Well, I think the one big thing is the property taxes end in 5 years. You had a chance to look at that. But let's go back and talk about the original incentive program. First of all, when we purchased that lot, it went out to bid and we had the highest bid. As a matter of fact, the other bids were 0. Having said that, we met with the town manager and he asked us to give him a rough idea of what size building we're going to build. And I said, our budget is about 3,500 square feet. And he came back to us and said, we are considering doing an incentive program for new businesses because we haven't had a new retail business in years or decades. And we really want to kick this off. And he said, if we do this, would you be able to afford to build a bigger building? So I sat down with the town manager, we made projections of what we thought the incentives would be over a 10-year period. And we upped the size of the building from 3,500 square feet to 4,600 square feet. So we actually spent all of that money on the original building, make it a much larger, much usable building in our downtown. So that was part of an incentive program that was meant to encourage new development in downtown Fraser and to put us in a position to have a much larger building. What I would say is if you look around, it's work. We have a lot of new businesses, and not to talk too much about what we've accomplished or what we've done, the Bison developers told us flat out that if not for us establishing that business and building that retail, they would not have gone through with their project. That is a quote. So I think the original incentives were intended to kick off a process of revitalizing our downtown. And we were the business pioneers that were willing to do that. And I think it's worked. But that money, we did not ask for that money. The town manager came and said he and the mayor were considering an incentive program. If we were to do that, would you build a bigger building? And we did. So we have spent that building, that money in advance of getting it. So I view this as very, very different. I understand your perspective. And if there were a lot of the businesses clamoring and willing to make matching contributions, then I would be, of course, totally in favor of an allocation process. But we're talking about making it an additional major investment in downtown that I think is going to make a big difference. I think these are apples and oranges. But I don't dismiss your thoughts at all.
It's a lot of money for one building.
Okay. The building was very expensive, and enhancing it is very expensive. And we can not do this. I will ask a question. I think I know the answer. Has the business enhancement grant money gone unused almost every year?
Some of it has.
But I guess I view a business enhancement grant as something that should be furthering town programs. If we create a signage ordinance, we want to bear trash containers, ADA. I don't know that covering an existing patio in a building that's not a blight, it's not offensive
I
or
appreciate
anything
that.
like that. It's a good looking building.
It is,
So
but
I-
it's actually covering patios is one of the areas in the business enhancement grant program that the town has laid out.
I'm just being quite careful with taxpayer dollars going to a private business
Okay.
over and over and over.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. I would like to see, the March 1st deadline, who has applied and maybe take another look at it and rank them. Just because we allocate a certain amount of money doesn't mean we need to spend it.
I'm concerned
I mean,
with the
it's-
fact that we roll it over. That
If
means
it's a,
that we
if
need to spend
it's a
it.
valid project that's going to add value to the town, I would rather fund sort of more startup people that really are in dire need of those funds to get, seed money to get going.
Sorry, you want to say this?
I'm sorry?
I thought you were finished. Go ahead.
No, I'm finished.
Okay, I wonder who's in charge of letting people know, like who's in charge of the marketing of this, because I've had a commercial building in this town, I've been business in it since I was 26 years old. And have heard about this grant like 6 months ago, after I've been on the board for 2.5 years into that. I mean, I don't think anyone knows about it.
Yeah, Katie, I think it was a program, I don't know about its initial rollout, but that in recent years has kind of just been floating along and hasn't been well promoted. So an email went out to all business licenses last week with information about the grant. It's on our website. We're planning to do a social media push. I'm hoping that the DDA board will help promote it. But I think we all agree that it has to be better promoted than it has been in the past if we want businesses to take advantage of it. The idea behind the program is that if businesses improve their exteriors, their facades, their patios, landscaping, streetscaping, that yes, that's a benefit to the individual business, but it's also just a benefit to the larger Fraser community and particularly our downtown and making it more attractive. And so that will help drive economic development.
Yeah, I get what it is,
Right.
but I just want to know who's marketing.
Yeah. And I'm trying to address some of Adam's comments as well and just provide more information. It's not currently set up as seed money for a new business. We have the business incentive program, which allows businesses to request incentives for a new business venture to try to help with some of that seed money and supporting a business as it's trying to get off the ground in the first few years. This is meant to support existing businesses and kind of making some of those improvements that they might not be making otherwise due to lack of financial viability or lack of incentive or whatever it may be.
So are we still offering these economic incentive programs? I thought we had stopped that.
So the board approved last fall, basically just extending an open invitation to businesses to be able to request economic incentives.
So which businesses have we offered it to, or how many, and when was the last one we actually did?
The two businesses that have taken advantage were Fraser Valley Distilling and Vicious Cycle. Grand Park had been awarded, but then that award went away because it expired.
Okay.
So
So,
only 2 businesses.
And we currently have 2 other business owners who are interested in the program as well with new businesses.
What about Birdie Lounge and Simple Coffee?
sorry, yeah, I was just gonna say Simple Coffee, and so the Xerox building, Bison's building right there on Highway 40. They got a deferral of plant investment fees, so they could pay them over 2 years. And then Simple Coffee and Birdie Lounge received a sales tax rebate for 5 years.
Simple Coffee was it new, they just moved, then they got the new business, which. Love Simple Coffee, but the rules should apply the same to everyone.
Barry,
I
what
think
sort
more
of
than-
impact would it have if we waited until that March deadline to consider your request?
It may have no impact at all, or it may impact our ability to secure a contractor. If I can still get the contractor, it'll have no effect. We would have to get, we would probably, well, you have to prefab all the steel in Denver, and we have to start digging through the concrete. It'd have to be pretty soon after that. If it went into summer, we would probably miss this year, because we can't close the patio during the summer months, because people want to be out there. So we would have to get all the concrete work done. You would get the steel fabricated, get the concrete work done in March, and then probably erected in April, May. Yeah, I'd like to point out that, in my opinion, the 2 new buildings that got the business enhancement grants have been real game changers for the town. And they're beautiful buildings, and they're very, very expensive. And I'd also like to point out, I don't know if you're seeing this, but our revenues over the last 3 years have been flat and our expenses are up. It's a very difficult environment for restaurants. And I think for us, this would enhance it. And I want to circle back, Brian, you didn't quite agree with me, but I am a worrier. I'm an actuary, I think, years into the future. I'm very concerned with the grand plan that Altera and the town of Winter Park have to really create an environment where people can come to town and stay in that little area and never leave. That's their goal. Altera's been extremely vocal that that is their objective. And I think we have, as individual businesses in town, 3 to 5 years to really enhance our downtown, attract new businesses, and make sure that it has the critical mass of restaurants and shopping so that it doesn't get overwhelmed by what the town of Winter Park and the resort are planning. So I think, as I said at the beginning, I think it's a wonderful program. And I'm not sure there are many businesses who have the ability and willingness to invest the large amounts of money that are necessary to do things that you see every time you drive by. So I hope you all will grant this for us and we'll get started. And if not, I get it.
So Mayor and Board of Trustees, I think based on some of the conversations, some of these things come down to some policy decisions that may need to be made for the existing business enhancement grant. And just to clarify, Simple Coffee and Birdie Lounge, they got the economic incentives grant. They didn't get a business enhancement grant, right?
Yeah, so it wasn't a grant, it's a sales tax rebate.
Right,
as part
okay.
of the economic
Just want to clarify. So just to put that out there, this could be something that we could focus on a future session. But you obviously have make a decision now or whenever you would see fit.
That was actually the goal of my conversation, is to have a greater conversation, creating some rules and, just even eligibility. If you have incentives in place, are are we doubling up on taxpayer and those kind of things? I really welcome a conversation. I appreciate you putting the information forward, the history as well, because that's important to these decisions.
Do you need a motion?
We need to make a decision so we can
Well, I mean,
continue, or we can.
I would make a motion to table this until March 1st. Give us more time to, sorry, March 3rd. To give us more time to look at other applicants, see what the need is. And I think we need to look at this all together. Need to look at this, whatever this is called, the 125,000.
Business enhancement grant.
So this is business enhancement grant and the economic incentive, and look at it as all of like one big package together instead of piecing it out. And how much the town willing to give up in terms of revenue. So it's a broader conversation in my mind.
That's exactly where I was taking this in my head.
You want to
So-
make a motion to table this?
Motion to table until March.
Trustee Gregor, are you just, are you asking the applicant to apply for the March round with everyone else? And maybe in
Sure.
February, we could have a
I
policy
think that's
discussion
fine.
specifically.
You already have $7,500, right? We're not taking that back.
Right.
Well, I probably won't move forward.
Okay.
I
mean, that's your decision. That's not,
Well,
I don't think we're taking it back necessarily. We're just saying we need to consider,
Okay. Well, every business has to make a decision what they can afford to do and how to allocate their scarce resources. I guess we have that grant and I can choose to go forward at a later date. So I guess we'll wait and see what happens March 3rd. Thank you for your time.
second, anybody?
Yeah, do we need to make a motion on that, or is that just?
Or is that
a
for
presentation?
action?
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks, guys. All right, next up, resolution 2025-0107, Rendezvous EMF 8 Hotel, amended FPDP. Garrett, something.
Thank you, board. Just getting the presentation up. Garrett Scott, town planner. So the item before you this evening is an amended final plan development plan, or FPDP, for Rendezvous East Mountain Filing 8. I won't read off the applicant and property owner names here, but just for some reference, they are both kind of entities of Walsh Dupart, which is a Denver-based real estate development firm focused on the hospitality sector, and as well as an entity of Coble/Rendezvous. The location of this development is the empty parcel adjacent to US 40 between Rendezvous Road and Citywide Banks. The proposed land use is a 103-room hotel. The property is zoned planned development, or PD, and again, the request is an approval of an amended FPDP. Here's a look at that location of the development. So speaking to the review and approval timeline, 2003 is when the overall PDDP for Rendezvous was approved. A final plat and FPDP for this property was originally approved back in July of 2006. Soon after that time is when the Citywide Bank was developed, but these other two parcels just sat vacant. In September of this year, we received this land use application. Referral reviews occurred, and then it was brought to the Planning Commission as a public hearing in November. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the amended FPDP. And since that time, we've gone through a second round of referral review, and now we are at the Board of Trustees decision today. I also want to note for the board that although the application was initially received in September, town staff held two separate pre-application meetings with the applicant in May and August of last year. Additionally, concurrently with this amended FPDP application, there's also a minor subdivision plat application. The current parcel is actually two separate lots that are proposed to be combined into one. But technically, this minor subdivision is subject to administrative approval and not subject to approval by the Planning Commission and the board. However, this plat is included in the meeting packet for the board's reference. So this shows the FPDP or site plan essentially for the property as it was approved back in 2006. The bank site is on the left as pad A, and pads B and C were two separate proposed commercial buildings. They weren't actually designed. There were no floor plans or building elevations for these pads at that time. So ultimately, any development conforming to this would have required a major site plan approval. And these buildings would have contained approximately 8,200 square feet of commercial uses if development proceeded according to how it was originally approved. Here's a look at the existing conditions of the site. It's not very exciting to look at. Again, the property is bounded by existing roads. There's some existing trees and landscaping. This is where the existing rendezvous entry monument sign is. Here's a look at some street view of the site. This is looking at the property from Highway 40. This is looking at the property from Rendezvous Road, facing kind of towards the bank. And then finally, this is kind of looking to the south towards the Winter Park Resort, kind of from the bank property. So here's the site plan for the proposed hotel. Again, it's proposed to have 103 hotel rooms, as well as lobby space and other common amenities, outdoor pool, etc. And the site plan proposes 89 on-site parking spaces. Here's a look, excuse me, here's a look at a rendering of the hotel that just helps give a sense of the overall scale of the development and style of the building. This table comes from page 3 of the staff report. I just wanted to note that this planning area 13E within Rendezvous had maximum allowed uses that included residential, lodging, and commercial square footage. The original approved FPDP from 2006 essentially just considered commercial uses within this planning area, and this current amended FPDP would reduce the approved commercial uses in lieu of lodging units. Speaking briefly to some of the town's architectural design guidelines for commercial and mixed-use development, a majority of them are met, including items related to building elements and materials, roof elements and design, and building color as detailed in the staff report. This colored elevation, as well as the materials package, helps convey the types of materials that will be used on the building. So I wanted to spend the bulk of this presentation speaking through kind of three kind of more significant or major items that were reviewed by staff as well as discussed with the Planning Commission, starting with the height of the building. So the maximum height in Planning Area 13E in Rendezvous is 45 feet. This is per the 2003 Rendezvous Plan Development District Plan. The applicant's FPDP shows that the top of the roof, excluding any parapets, which I'll speak to later, is essentially right at that 45-foot height when measured from the finished floor elevation of the building. However, height should not be measured from the finished floor elevation. It should be measured from the average finished grade of the primary four corners of the building. That height definition comes directly from the 2003 Rendezvous Annexation Agreement. It's actually slightly different than the height definition in town code, but this is the height definition that applies for this property. Something I want to speak to is that because the building is L-shaped, it's hard to identify only 4 primary corners. Town staff has identified 6 as depicted on this image, which is also in the staff report and summarized on the table in this slide. When considering these 6 primary corners of the building, the average finished grade of the proposed hotel is approximately 1.5 feet below the finished floor elevation of the building. The main reason for this, if I could zoom in here, maybe, okay, that's not working. The north corner of the building, here where the laser pointer is now pointing, that corner is, the finished grade of that corner is approximately 3 to 4 feet below the finished floor elevation of the building, which is why this overall average finish grade is about 1.5 feet lower. And this can also be seen in the elevations that are included in the FPDP. This is facing from the north, so looking at the hotel like from the bank site. You can see that the finished floor elevation here on the right-hand side at this 100-foot level. And then the proposed finish grade is sloping down as you go to the left. So again, this is that northern corner of the building, which is a few feet lower than the actual ground floor in the main structure. So essentially this results in, the building looking a few feet taller on the side that's closer to the Fraser River and the bank. So in speaking to why staff and the Planning Commission recommended approval of the FPDP as is, that section of the code referenced there on the slide allows for the final height of buildings in plan developments to be negotiated at the FPDP submittal stage by the Planning Commission and subject to further approval by the board based on 10 different characteristics that are outlined in the code. The staff report summarizes staff's assessment of those various characteristics. It includes things like adverse visual effects, potential to cast shadows on adjacent properties, public safety considerations, etc. Broadly speaking, staff has no concerns with the proposed height as is. And I also just want to note that this section of the code that allows height to be negotiable in PD zones has existed in the town code since the original PDD ordinance was approved back in 1985, and it has been carried in our code since that time verbatim without any changes. To staff's knowledge, this section has been used only once before for the Grand Park Market Street buildings to approve essentially an appurtenance, a clock tower that is taller than would normally be allowed by code. Another thing that I want to note is that the building also includes a vertical parapet as well as these sloped architectural features that add height above the flat roof of the building. However, the height of these features are less than 10 feet above the flat roof. And this section of the code reference here does allow appurtenances to buildings to extend up to 10 feet beyond the maximum permitted height of a structure. That section of the code does not identify parapets as an appurtenance specifically. The idea is more maybe standalone structures like a spire or a belfry or things like that. However, it does specifically mention things like mechanical units, heating and ventilation equipment, and screening for those. And staff believes that the combination of this allowance for appurtenances, as well as the fact that building height overall is negotiable in a PD district, allows this proposed height to be recommended for approval. The Planning Commission agreed with staff's assessment, which is why the height has been unchanged since this went to the Planning Commission in November. So I know this was a lot of information on the building height, so I'll kind of pause here for any questions or discussion by the board.
All right, keep going.
All right.
What is the difference? 49.5, so it's 4.5 feet higher than the code, is that right?
So instead of looking at primarily the code first, we must look to the governing documents of the Rendezvous PDD in conjunction with the code. The maximum allowed height is 45 feet. This building, when measured, the measured height according to how height should be measured in Rendezvous is 46.5 feet. So let's start with that first. And that's based on this elevation here.
Okay, that the previous slide said, I thought it said 49.5.
So the 49.5 feet that's shown here is measuring to the top of the parapet around the building.
Okay, so the roof is.
The
46.
roof, the top of the flat roof is this point right here.
Okay,
Sure, it's just a vertical screen essentially. That's on the top of a roof, a flat roof typically. So like the parts of the building here that extend above the roof. Does that make sense? Sorry.
Just visual interest.
I had to look at accessory or other item associated with a particular activity or style of living. So I don't,
So I
it's an
would,
accessory.
It's an aesthetic
Is it-
thing, right?
Is it,
What-
is
Well,
it more
and it's
decorative?
because the roof is probably sloping, and so it's not really flat. And so you have to hide that little slope, so you're not really looking at this. So you put this thing, it's like a little skirt, only it's on top.
yeah, so I think maybe we're getting two things mixed up here. The parapet is exactly how Trustee Smith described. It's just a extension of the building's exterior vertical facade above the roof line. Primary intent is to, I would say, shield things that are up on the roof, like AC or heating units, other mechanical equipment. And appurtenance is something identified in our code. Again, something like a spire, a belfry, like a church bell tower. Say that again. A parapet is not defined as an appurtenance in our code. So given that it's not, but given that height is negotiable in a PD, staff is acceptable with this height proposal. That's just what I'm trying to get at. Any other question? Yeah, of course. Any other questions or? So moving on to the second item, which deals with site access and transportation. So what's shown here to the left is Marianne's Trail or Marianne's Loop, which was constructed, I believe, last summer. It currently terminates from its, it's a gravel trail, currently terminates right here, right at the bank site. Users of the trail would currently use the private access drive and then either get back on the Fraser River Trail this way, or they can connect to the Highway 40 shared use path by crossing Highway 40 here. There's a sidewalk connection already. However, with this application, there were no major concerns around vehicular traffic entering and exiting the site, given the existing signal at Rendezvous Road. But any development on this parcel is going to generate more vehicular traffic. And if there's more vehicular traffic on this private road, town staff identified that as a conflict for any users of the trail, and simply wanted to identify an appropriate solution with the applicant to accommodate trail users as this development moves forward. So a couple things that I want to note is that the approval of the original FPDP back in 2006 predates the town's current standards around roads, sidewalks, trails, etc., which is why this private road was constructed with no sidewalks at the time, I would imagine. Ultimately, staff and the applicant have arrived at a solution where a sidewalk would be provided for a portion of the property. A sidewalk is provided along the access road within a portion of the property's boundaries. And then a bike lane, striped bike lane is provided for another portion. The reason why it's slightly infeasible to provide a sidewalk for the entire way is there's a fairly steep embankment here, and then it butts right into jurisdictional wetlands for the Fraser River that we'd rather not disturb. I will also note that this is kind of an interim solution meant to accommodate just this site. Certainly, This area over here is another area, a planning area within Rendezvous 14E. It's been contemplated at a high level that potentially this access road be extended to provide secondary access into planning area 14E in addition to access to Highway 40. And certainly if that road is ever extended behind the fire station, it's going to require a lot more legwork. And certainly town staff would enforce our current roadway standards for private roads if and when this private road is extended. Any questions or comments on this?
Could you not put a trail, I don't know, you go back to the map,
Sure.
into the wetlands? Is there anything that precludes that? Because isn't the trail already crossing wetlands to the north of that?
So my understanding is that the trail, whenever Marianne's Loop Trail was constructed, the agreement with CPW was to not impact the wetlands in this area. I don't believe it significantly impacts any wetlands over here, which is why the alignment was chosen this way. This section through here is part of the groomed winter trail for cross-country skiing.
That's what I thought. So it is a trail there.
Yes, but just for winter use only. If a gravel trail was constructed in this area for summer use, it would impact the wetlands. CPW didn't want that. And I think that's kind of still not a viable option. The third and final item that I want to speak to is with regards to parking on the site. So per the town's parking requirements, hotels are required to have at least one parking space per room. So therefore, based on town code, 103 parking spaces would normally be required for this development. However, there's a section of town code referenced there on the screen that states that parking in a PD is negotiable, both in terms of the number of parking spaces provided on site, as well as the actual size of those parking spaces. So a couple of things I want to mention with regards to this. Many other Colorado mountain communities have actually codified a hotel parking ratio of less than one parking space per room. And many other communities have approved hotel developments at a less than 1-to-1 parking space to hotel room ratio, including in Steamboat Springs, Basalt, Breckenridge, and Telluride. I also want to note that our current codified standard parking size space is 20 feet by 10 feet, whereas many of our peer communities, Colorado mountain towns, actually have a slightly smaller standard parking space size. So ultimately, what the applicant is proposing is a few things, and I'll maybe speak to them in turn. First, they're requesting a 10% in on-site parking due to proximity to public transit. There's an existing Lyft bus stop right next to the site. It's the red line that loops through Rendezvous and then heads to the resort. The applicant has confirmed that they would enhance that bus stop to more of a full bus shelter in order to secure this 10% reduction. And with this 10% reduction, they could be allowed 93 parking spaces on site. The next thing I want to speak to is that our code also allows for reductions in on-site parking if there is a shared parking agreement between different properties. So right next to this property is the citywide bank site. When that was approved in 2006, this parking table was part of that original approval. And what I want to note is that the required parking ratio for the bank is one space for every 200 square feet of building of the bank. So that means that 34 parking spaces were constructed on the bank site. However, current town code only requires one parking space for every 400 square feet. So essentially, these 34 spaces, if you were to build this bank today, it would only need 17 parking spaces. Another thing that I just want to mention is that banking has obviously changed a lot since 2006 with online banking and things like that. You know, driving by this bank site, there's always ample parking. It's very overparked, I think, for the parking demands and needs that it has. And I think it's very feasible for the applicant to secure a shared parking agreement with this bank. The peak times for parking at a bank are generally weekdays during the day, which do not overlap with the peak parking demand at a hotel, which are typically nights and especially during the weekend. One last thing I want to mention is the Planning Commission resolution mentioned 79 on-site parking spaces. And I just wanted to explain where that number came from. The idea is that if the applicant can secure a shared parking agreement for some off-site spaces, especially at the bank site, town staff and the applicant are both, you know, they desire to remove kind of the 10 parking spaces that are in this awkward wedge area that would likely just, you know, not be as well utilized anyways. So if you remove these 10 spaces, the other spaces that are provided on site total 79. Town staff believes this is achievable. For example, if the applicant secured, you know, a shared parking agreement with the bank for 14 of their spaces, then they're back to 93 spaces in total, which is what would be allowed with the 10% reduction in for transit proximity. So the 10% reduction from transit is just in our code. To be honest, I don't know where that percentage came from, but the idea is just if your property is close to a bus route, then there's probably slightly less parking demand.
I thought it was, there was like a certain, like a hard number. You know, if you're a certain amount of feet away from public transit.
Right.
That's the number, or if that's just what they're requesting?
So what our code says is if you are, I want to say within, I forget the distance, I apologize, but we define proximity to transit as just being close to Highway 40. Forget the distance to Highway 40, and if it's 250 feet, or I forget the exact number, but so long as you're, there's no, it's just a percentage of, sorry. It's just a percentage of whatever minimum parking you would be required to provide. So if your development would be required to provide 10 spaces, then you can provide 9 if you're close to Highway 40, essentially. And there's no 10% is the hard number. Yes. Sorry. There's no cap. Yeah. No problem. Any other questions on parking?
I mean, I hate to see that parking disappear in that little corner because I don't really know what the long-term plan is across the street. Right now, I send everybody down there to park and take the bus because Rendezvous doesn't have a bus that goes all the way up. And I'm assuming that that will change someday because at some point the town is going to really have to beef up the bus system so that people are going to use the new transit center and take the gondola. But there's going to be a few lag years, I would think, and having parking next to a bus stop might be a valuable thing, depending on especially what happens across the street where everybody parks now.
Well, they shouldn't be parking in the hotel parking lot.
Right.
No.
Private parking.
But I mean, that should be, I mean, maybe that's parking
mean, maybe
for
the town
transit.
constructs
Yeah.
constructs a parking lot somewhere else for the Rendezvous residents. There's parking up by the picnic area and on the other side of the river. There's parking there.
Well, yeah.
Is there a bus stop there?
And I don't think it's the responsibility of the hotel to be
No,
building
I
an
don't
additional
think so,
10
no.
spots for the town.
No.
I think that Trustee Smith, your point is valid. I think there's nothing requiring that those spots go away, certainly. the applicant can secure, a shared parking agreement for as many spaces as they can get, and still build these 10 spaces, right? We don't have parking maximums either. I guess I'm just simply communicating that in staff's opinion, if they can secure additional parking offsite, we would like to see these spaces go away. That's all. But
Not there. I mean, that is an odd looking parking here. I mean, that little corner, it's a waste of space.
I think the applicant wants to say something about it.
yeah, I mean, I can let the applicant speak to your question around guest experience if they would like. Yeah.
How's it going tonight? When it comes to parking, I can
Let
tell
us know
you.
who you are. And
Oh, sorry, John Walsh with Wall Street Park. My business partner and I run a small hospitality group out of the Front Range in Denver. Have hotels across the mountain towns, and we love this market more than any other market. But we're also really happy with our execution, what we're delivering for you here. Jumping into parking, we are not concerned in any way about parking. I will say that from a hotel standpoint, if you don't have enough parking, you get hit with reviews left and right. It's a terrible roller coaster ride from a business standpoint. Hotel parking is never utilized to 1-to-1, hence why we went after the 10% reduction. And we see in similar mountain markets, you see 0.8, 0.72, 0.75 from a parking ratio standpoint in most select service products built across mountain towns. And all of those properties do not have parking issues as we look to like case studies and making sure we get it right and not miss the mark. And the off hours with the bank and having overflow parking and getting that REA in place is super important to us to make sure we have full parking for guests. Yeah, we're at night hours. We make sure everyone has a stall, but I mean, even more than ever, you look at the transit for Fraser and everything you guys are doing, but bus stop, a lot of family share rooms. It's one car, they'll take 2 to 3 rooms down. We're not full every night. Friday and Saturday night are peak nights. Bank isn't full. We're off hours. When you make the comment on like trailers and stuff like that, that does become harder to accommodate in any condition. Like if you use a CTL contract or you have any of the 18-wheelers, it makes it tougher. We would look for additional offsite opportunities to house that, but in no way in parking can we fit them or work a 18-wheeler into the fold. But yeah, from our point of view, from an operations standpoint, we are in no way concerned about overflow parking.
Have you had an initial discussion with the bank yet?
We have.
Okay.
There's information I can't disclose on that
No,
topic,
that's
but
fine.
it is definitely.
It sounded like it would be conditional on
Oh,
parking.
100%.
So I wanted to make sure
Yep.
that was-
I mean, our goal is to keep as much open space and less blacktop in this community as possible and not provide more parking that's necessary, but also not going less than is what's required by guests. So obviously trying to find that fine line and done a lot of research and a lot of talks and meetings with Garrett and team in tow to make sure we're just all on top of that and looking at it the same way. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I would say with the increased access to trains coming up here, and I've noticed that at the resort, there are more and more people that are riding the train up here, dragging their luggage to the hotel at the resort, and they can jump on a bus and go take the red line and go, right to the hotel.
Yeah.
Or they can go to Fraser, take the black line or whatever. I mean, there are ways to get around
And
driving up here.
And you got to remember the guest profile isn't just, one-off couples and stuff like that. I mean, you have construction workers who are in a van. You've got, it's more common that even people in the communities, like people come to visit and they don't have room in their house. They put them up at the hotel, but you don't get a car because they drove up together. Like I could go through scenarios after scenario, but we still, we will offer it and get one if the guest demand is there. But right now we're really excited about the bus stop we're about to put in, and we put our front door kind of right at the bus stop. And similar to, I guess, maybe over speaking here, but with what Arrow did up the way on the right side, the Arrow development and that bus stop, we love the execution there. And we're going to be kind of rolling that in from a aesthetic standpoint and doing something very similar at that location. So. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I'll just wrap up the presentation here. I know we already did good discussion from the applicant. He's welcome to come back up for any further questions or comments, but ultimately staff recommends that the board approve Resolution 2025-0107 with the conditions as noted. The conditions of approval document the board's approval of the building height as proposed, the requirement to modify the access road for non-vehicular users, which is already incorporated into their FPDP, and then essentially approving, an allowance for reduced on-site parking subject to improving the bus stop as well as securing an off-site parking agreement with adjacent properties, as well as our other standard conditions of approval.
I had one question. It was one of your first slides, second, third slide.
Sure.
It talks about commercial space, like 6,700 square feet of commercial. Are those other businesses or that's
just the existing bank property. So the citywide bank property and this hotel are within the same planning area for
Okay.
Rendezvous.
okay? So there's not any additional commercial space within the hotel.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Any other questions for Garrett or the applicant?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 2025-01-07.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. All right, moving on to resolution 2025-0108, Rendezvous Water Tap Repayment Agreement.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael Brack, Town Manager. What's before you tonight for this agenda goes back with a little bit of a history. In 2003, the Town of Fraser and Rendezvous into an amended and reinstated annexation agreement that provided an agreement for water taps to be credited to the development for the construction of regional water facilities. In 2020, a letter was sent from the town to Rendezvous Colorado LLC, providing a confirmation that that tap credit had been satisfied with the repayment of the construction costs for those water taps, for the construction of those regional water facilities that credited that water tap account. Based on some discussions that took place earlier last year, this came up that there was a miscalculation with the tap credit and how the town calculated the tap credit. And it was based on the assumption that for $1 million spent on like a water tank, for example, you would take that $1 million and that's what was owed to the developer for the water tap credit account. But after reviewing the annexation agreement, discussing with our town attorney and our finance team and our public works director, we're able to confirm that this was a miscalculation from our previous finance department, and that we were looking to rectify this. So instead of the water tap prepaid account being a dollar amount, it was really meant and intended to be a prepaid taps based on the cost of the regional water facilities divided by the current cost of a water tap, to be a positive number of water tap credits to be used. So after some constructive conversations with the Rendezvous team, we were able to work through how we could pay this back. The total amount that is owed since 2020 for water tap plant investment fees that were not rebated back to Rendezvous Development is in the total of $830,900. And after discussing this with the Rendezvous team, we were able to work out this agreement that is in the packet, where we're not looking at, the town Rendezvous was open to the town not having to provide that as a lump sum, which would be, I think, very impactful to our water fund for that large unanticipated lump sum cost. But instead being able to distribute it over the next few years with half of the lump sum of $415,450 due on or before March 15th of 2026. And then the second half of that lump sum being due on or before March 15th of 2027. So the town has an obligation to pay back these water costs. And in working with Rendezvous, able to work this agreement, I think it's been a really constructive conversation about how we can both satisfy our requirements for the town to pay it back without the significant impact to our water fund. So what this agreement would allow us to do is to pay that back over those few years and to make up and catch up for that. And this agreement is what provisions for that. And based on state law, for me to enter into an agreement, even though it's something that the town already owes the development team, it does require a board action and approval to allow for myself as a town manager to enter into this agreement. So I have a lot more detail in the staff briefing, and I'm happy to answer any other questions for this. I do recommend approving Resolution 2025-0108, which authorizes myself as the town manager to enter into this agreement with that payment schedule shown. But happy to answer any questions on the matter.
So it says it will never expire. I mean, it would seem to me like there was a fixed cost that you're paying for, and once you pay them back, then we're done. Is that not what's happening?
So I have it in the staff briefing, but basically if you were to take this water tap credit, once they are complete developing, once they're finished with all their development and Rendezvous side, their agreement from their separation with Grand Parks allows for any additional water taps to be passed on to Grand Park development. But again, it is on page 2 of the staff briefing. I have some examples, or actually the actual numbers of the water plant investment fees. So for example, in 2001, our plant investment fee was $6,000, right? So if you built a $1 million water tank that is defined in the annexation agreement as a regional water facility, which is entitled to that reimbursement, you would take that $1 million and you would divide it by 6,000. And that's how many water taps would be credited to their development. So that is how the annexation agreement reads and does require of the town. And instead of the town just paying that lump sum up front, which I think would have pretty dire consequences on our water tap fund, this allows us to spread it out so we're not looking at any major impact to our water fund, and we can budget accordingly for it for the next few years.
Does this expire when the annexation agreement expires if it doesn't get renewed?
It does not. Ken, is that your consensus, or do you have a different opinion?
Yeah, so the tap credits vest when the regional water infrastructure is built and paid for by the developer. So you calculate a number of taps that they get a credit for by the amount of money they put into the regional water structure. That number of taps, no matter how taps fees increase in the future, that number of taps is their credit. So the credit is there until they use it, basically until they build out and pay for a tap and then get a rebate for the tap at the time of the CO.
So what should have been happening since 2020 is that when they paid a water tap plant investment fee, it should have been rebated back to Rendezvous Development, Rendezvous Colorado LLC. I think there was just some confusion with the letter sent out. The town never got a response back from Rendezvous, but from just recent conversations, we're able to identify this as really a growing liability to the town's water fund. and identify it and work out a way that we can work through a repayment for those water taps that were not reimbursed, rebated back to the developer, and be able to catch up. And just moving forward, we now have a clear understanding, and we've already rebated any water plan investment fees that were paid in 2024. We've already provided those rebates back, but as far as the water taps from 2020 to 2023 is really the larger number that we're looking at here for the 830,900. And we have gone through this in detail with the Excel as well as with Kent's team and our finance team and Public Works to verify this process and to make sure that it's accurate. We're all in agreement with it.
Get it over with right away and then be done with it.
Then it's $830,000 out of 1 year's budget.
I mean, they're not charging us interest, right? It's not getting,
Yeah.
so we might as well do it in installments. instead
Yeah,
of-
I think Rendezvous is being very nice to not demand it right away. So
I'd like to make a motion to approve resolution 2025-0108, authorizing town manager to sign the Rendezvous water tap reimbursement agreement.
I'll second it.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Resolution 2025-0109, Grand Park West Mountain Filing 1, 10W and 11W revised FPDP and final plat.
Thank you, Mayor. Garrett Scott, Town Planner. The item before you is a final plat and final plan development plan for Grand Park West Mountain Filing 1. So just brief overview of the development. Applicant and property owner is Cornerstone Winter Park Holdings LLC. This development is located north of a proposed extension to Grand Park Drive, west of the Union Pacific Railroad. The proposed land uses include 79 single-family residences. The property is zoned PD, and the request is approval of a final plat and FPDP that proposes 7 additional residential lots compared to what was previously approved. Here's a look at the development location as included in the PDD. The development areas are in the dashed lines here, as well as over here. Here's a view of the development overlain with Google Earth aerial imagery. So you can see the site in context, Leland Creek subdivision, kind of to the southeast, Grand Park Drive extending past Old Victory Road, and the Village of Grand Park in this area here. So speaking to the review and approval timeline, this was originally submitted as a preliminary plat and FPDP in March of 2023 and approved by the Planning Commission in March of that year. May of last year, 2024, is when the final plat and FPDP were approved by the Planning Commission and then approved by the board in June. The applicant has requested some modest revisions to the FPDP and plat, which is why they're coming back to the board. We received their revised FPDP and plat just last month in December. Last week, the Planning Commission had a public hearing for these documents and recommended their approval. And now they are before you all, the Board of Trustees, for final approval. So speaking to why this is coming back in front of you all, per this section of our code, an approved FPDP may be modified through either a minor or major amendment. Minor FPDP amendments are administratively approved, but they only apply to fairly limited circumstances. What our code says is that they can be processed for minor changes to the location, siting, and height of buildings or structures, so long as those changes do not exceed 10% of any measurable standard. Conversely, major FPDP amendments are triggered under a variety of conditions. They require a public hearing before the Planning Commission and approval by the board. So for example, they're required when you have a change of use, like we just considered with the rendezvous application, change in use from business or commercial to hotel or lodging. It's also required when you have an increase in the intensity or density of use or a rearrangement of lots, blocks, and building tracts. Those two bullets are what we have here, although in a fairly minor capacity. It's adding 7 additional residential lots. Major amendments to an FPDP are also required if they're reduction in open space, a reduction in parking or pavement width compared to a previously approved FPDP, or when a density transfer between planning areas is proposed. The final plat is also changing because the number of lots is changing. So this also requires a major plat amendment technically, although the plat has not been recorded, so there's really nothing to amend, but we're processing it, according to code with the public hearing and approval by the board. So just speaking to what the changes actually are, this shows kind of the western part of this proposed development as it was approved in June of last year. And then if you look at their FPDP today, the difference is just on the top left, those lots got less deep, and that yellow area shown there is no longer part of those lots. And there's also additional lots here along the road, again, going from 14 previously to 21. One thing I also want to note is that one of the conditions of approval from last summer was the requirement to have an approved water master plan for the entirety of West Mountain. This is a requirement per the 2003 annexation agreement that this master plan be in place and approved by the town before any developments on West Mountain can move forward, essentially. So again, a lot of progress has been made since last summer. The town has approved the construction documents for the water distribution system, water mains, tank locations, pumps, etc. Public works staff as well as Merrick are still working with Terracina on finalizing some final details regarding water tank design, as well as the actual master plan study document that documents some of the modeling assumptions and things like that. So nearly at the finish line with this. So staff's recommendation is approval of resolution 2025-0109 with the conditions as noted. These are the same conditions of approval that were in the resolution from last summer when it was originally approved. They're still just carried forward. It includes just addressing all pending referral review comments, receiving approval of that West Mountain Water Master Plan, and as well as our kind of standard conditions of approval regarding things like development improvements agreements, the address map, etc. So any questions before we turn it over to the applicant?
Just curious why the changes. Maybe Mr. Lipscomb could explain that lots are shrunken, or I mean, I'm not sure why the changes were. I was just curious why those changes were made in the way they were. Made them smaller lots and freed up additional open space, or?
I can let the applicant speak, but I guess just to provide staff's comment or input. Yes, they're with these additional lots, the applicant is still under the maximum density allowed in these planning areas per the 2005 Grand Park PDD. And then by reducing the acreage within these planning areas, I believe that gives the applicant greater flexibility to allocate that acreage for other planning areas, essentially. But I can let the applicant speak in more detail.
Yeah, we did some additional market analysis on it, Lewis, Clark Lipscomb for the record. And decided that it was more appropriate to do this, and it gives a little bit of variety of product there as well. So having them all be kind of the same lots there just didn't fit in ultimately after we did some pretty detailed analysis recently of the home market. So or single family lot market. So we like the smaller lots.
Any other questions? Staff or the applicant? Okay, I would entertain a motion if anybody wants to make one.
I'll move to approve resolution 20-25-0107. That's
Oh, no.
9.
09, approving Grand Park, West Mountain Filing 1, planning areas 10W and 11W final plat, and FPDP.
Any further discussion?
With the conditions.
Yeah, that, yeah, as stated.
Yes, stated, yeah.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on to St. Louis Landing limited scope justification. Michael.
Thank you, Mayor. So based on some recent concerns raised by the public regarding the town's authority to approve a limited phase construction permit for utility work to begin on St. Louis Landing, just want to provide a little bit of background on that. The Board of Trustees approved the final plat and major site plan for St. Louis Landing on July 31st, 2024, which included approval for the construction plans for underground utilities. These construction plans were approved in a condition that the developer address comments from our engineering team. The town's engineering and utilities team has worked with the developer to ensure that referral comments related to the limited phase approval for water and sewer utilities installation were addressed before the utilities were installed. Additionally, the development improvement agreement requires all necessary sureties and insurance to be in place before construction could commence, and it was in place before construction commenced. Regarding the question as to whether the town manager has the authority, or the town of Fraser has the authority to grant limited phase approval, it can be referenced in the following excerpt from the town code. Fraser Town Code section 18-1-30, subsection 15, provides for phase approval. The town manager is authorized to issue a permit for the construction of foundations or any other part of the building or structure before the construction documents for the whole building or structures have been submitted, provided that adequate information and detailed statements have been filed complying with pertinent requirements of this code. Such holder of such permit for the foundation or other parts of the building or structure shall proceed at the holder's own risk with the building operation and without assurance that a permit for the entire structure will be granted. Furthermore, the Winter Park Building Department, which manages building permits and related work for the town, agrees that the town manager has the authority to grant partial permitting for footings, foundations, and underground utilities. This authority to permit limited phase approval has been exercised on at least 3 different occasions that I'm aware of. In 2024, St. Louis Landing limited phase approval for the installation of water and sewer lines to allow some limited work to commence through a development improvement agreement while the town continued to negotiate a master development agreement. In 2024, last year, Strom Townhomes were authorized for the installation of footings, foundations, and underground utilities while the town was working through the exchange of easements with the developer. And in 2018, Grand Park was given a limited phase construction permit for footings and foundations related to for the Market Street buildings in Grand Park, in the village of Grand Park. So in conclusion, the town did have the authority to authorize limited phase approval for the construction of underground utilities per section 18-1-30, subsection 15 of the Fraser Town Code. This authority is exercised in collaboration with the town's engineer and utility team to ensure that proper sureties and a quality construction plan were in place, in addition to any other requirements by the town before these requests were granted.
Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you for that, Michael. Um, sure.
Thank you, Clark Lipscomb, for the record. Is the final plat on this project recorded?
It is recorded.
It is. So I think the predominant question, did you all receive my email last night? Okay, I'm seeing some shaking of heads. Did you guys get it? Well, the final plat was recorded without the conditions being met by the planning commission and the town board. And I know this because I know what the conditions were. And I have to meet the conditions routinely and have met them routinely since 1999. And so I'm curious, this speaks to, in that section that Michael cites, I like, the effort, but that's for building permit foundations. And you don't even have building permittable plans or a permit application for buildings. You're putting public infrastructure in on a recorded final plat, where the recorded final plat required conditions from you, the town board, just like the conditions we just went over on both the hotel deal and the lot deal. And I've never seen a final plat get recorded in that process, get circumvented without the conditions having been met. And some of these conditions are important. Some of them probably aren't that important, frankly, but some of them are kind of really important. And so I think the core question is not about building permits or foundations. You don't have building plans to issue permits on. The core question here is, why was the final plat recorded without the conditions being met by this developer? How was that done? And you're putting in public infrastructure. It's far from a water and sewer service line on already platted lots from existing public infrastructure, which is what you cited on Strom and what you cited on Market Street. So, I mean, kind of apples and oranges here, guys. And I mean, I'm kind of finding it shocking that the town board isn't concerned about the fact that your conditions for final plat recordation have not been met by the developer. And why? I mean, every developer in the community of Fraser and frankly, Winter Park and Grand County, and probably the history of man, would love to skip a lot of the conditions. They cost money, they take time. I understand all that, but there's a process. And the process has been circumvented. And that citation does not allow the circumvention of that process by the town manager. Thank you.
Happy to look into that further. Okay. Moving on to updates. Town board. My only update is the Northwest TPR meeting was last Thursday, hosted here with Brad Rome as the admin. We put our prioritization list together for the next 10 years. Grand County added a lot of projects and the other 4 counties didn't. So that's probably good for us to get some work done. It is a long-term plan, but yeah, it's a good step for Grant County for sure. Anything else?
Got a couple updates, Mayor. On February 12th at 9 a.m., the Fraser Winter Park Chamber Board meeting will be taking place at Winter Park Council Chambers. And they have requested, based on the interest of the town of Fraser having an appointment on the chamber board, to have 2 board members come to this board meeting and have a discussion about appointment for a Fraser appointee. And it's also just, I was informed about the kind of the process there, that the chamber board has to approve the town of Fraser to have an appointment on this board. So that there is something to keep in mind with that, but also they're just wanting to have just a kickoff conversation about it. So I'm trying to recruit 2 board of trustees.
Can you say that date and time again?
That is February 12th at 9 a.m.
What day of the week?
I don't know.
I can't.
This is for
Wednesday, I
the
think.
Chamber of Commerce. I could do it. What is it for?
Winter Park Fraser Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't do it.
I can do
I'm,
it.
I'm out of town. I can go as well.
Let's say, head of,
Got 2 volunteers,
who do you got? Sorry.
Peggy and Adam.
Peggy and Adam. All right. I'll send it with you as well, okay? All right. Other update that I have. Sarah Wick was able to create a new banner, and it is up at the Amtrak station. That does advertise explorefrasercolorado.com. And she said today that we've been getting good traffic through the QR code, because you can actually track the traffic just through that QR code. Even though we have some other ones, apparently you can have different QR codes that go to this to the same website, that you can pull statistics as far as their effectiveness in marketing. Additionally, we're looking at our other locations as well to, we already have a Town of Fraser banner at the rodeo grounds, but looking at changing that banner to explorefrasercolorado.com, really trying to market that website and promote the local businesses here in the area. And at the ice skating rink, and looking at all the different opportunities, the resort and different places here locally. So
What's a lot of traffic from the QR that coming?
I don't know. She didn't tell me. She just looked at that.
No.
Well, we can get you some numbers.
7 or like?
How about with her next quarterly market of 100?
I saw the numbers yesterday, Katie. I don't remember them exactly. They're not numbers that would blow you away.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
there's
they were
the
just
traffic.
put up, but people are
Interestingly,
scanning it.
The largest number was from people from Granby. So figure that one out.
I can have her include that in her quarterly marketing update if you would like.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Do you get their address by the QR code? How does that work?
I think it's
Doesn't
your
give
IP
you any
address.
Yeah, it's
personal information, does it?
Don't quote me on this. I think there's some geolocation data going on there that the QR code captures when you scan the QR code.
Do we know how many people are staying on the train and getting off in Fraser?
Are they gonna be providing those numbers?
I don't know. I know that you can book specifically to Fraser on the ski train. But it's not like they're watching that, you know?
Right,
so
you don't have to.
You don't have to get
you
on
can-
or off based on
I've
part
seen
or
it's like
Fraser. It's the same
maybe-
price.
It's maybe like 10 or 15 people at most
Per day.
that I see just driving by the train.
You right.
Then they get off. and they're
Then they
like,
drag their luggage over.
I missed my stop.
Yeah.
They'd probably
Yeah,
come in.
the Sharkies in my barn are like, we have our suitcases, part of the con in Grimley.
Every once in a while, the platform's full, but
Yeah,
it's usually because the train's late.
yes,
Well, that's the Amtrak train, not the ski train.
yeah,
Typically, yeah.
track.
That's all I got.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? I brought up the point about that bus stop in Grand Park that's on a dangerous curve and it sticks out on the road and someone's going to get hit. Are we able, do we have to go, I mean, how can we get that changed or to move down a little bit? Do we need to go through Winter Park or the lift or?
So, after discussing that with our snow management team, they have started cutting a piece, just kind of pushing it into off the shoulder a little bit more of the road, to provide some flat area next to the sign from the stand, so they're not on the road. But we can continue to look at different locations if you want to.
Yeah, I think it should be moved closer to the brewery, if anything, because
the
when
other
I saw
on
them
the other side,
clear the snow, but it only makes the bench stick out farther in the road. It looks like it, but it doesn't eliminate the curve.
We do have 2 lanes of travel on that as well. So I think they would stay on each side of the road based on what direction they're going. But we can definitely take a look.
I just think that's an accident.
Like right up from John's Drive.
Yeah.
Right in front of the condos,
Elk Creek.
right in front of Elk Creek condos. Yeah, it's right on the curve.
Yeah.
It sticks out. Well, in the winter, it sticks out. It looks like it sticks out on the road. And when there are people at the bus stop, they stand out in the road. Someone's gonna get hit or there's gonna be an accident.
Yeah, so our thought was just move it just to the other side of Elk Ranch Road because it's straight there at least. So it's,
So we went through, I can remember when we did that, so the lift was involved, the town was involved, because there's a process in identifying locations and clearances from stop signs and other roads and getting on the bus on the right side and all this kind of stuff. I mean, I don't have a problem looking at it from a, is there a better alternative, but it involved, we did it involved the lift and their manager, Town of Fraser was involved.
We could bring it up.
And again, I mean, I think, if anything, maybe it could be pushed back and a bigger pad could be made, but I think there's a little bit of drainage there potentially behind it that could need to be adjusted somehow.
It's just on a curve. And I don't want to be the one that says, I told you so, but there's gonna be an accident there. Someone's gonna get hit or there's gonna be, if you're coming around the curve, you can't, it's a blind curve. You can't see a car coming around when the snow is, when the road is icy.
Hear you, I mean, maybe just spitballing that entry that we did next to building A, that's closer up to Cousins Meadow. I wonder if it's not worth looking at, putting it, somewhere nearer up there.
Either way, either north or south, but not on a curve.
We can bring it up the next TAC meeting too. And
Yeah, Lisa would just say that's one of our busiest, that's the busiest.
Yeah, and the people that stand out in the road.
yeah, right.
well, and that's why I was thinking a little further north, just on the other side of Elk Ranch Road, a little closer to most of those condos.
Yeah.
Than if you moved it up
I think
know,
that's,
southwest, I guess, on Old Victory. But we'll talk about it in TAC.
Down a little bit, that would actually help serve not only the condos, but then your side of.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So the next meeting. So there's bus drivers that charge people to get on the bus. They charge the Latino community.
What?
Actually, a lot very.
Sorry, the lift?
Are you
Yeah,
kidding?
yeah. So they.
could you speak into your mic?
Is your mic on?
In a row. The guy that has the 11:30 or the 1:30 a.m. pickup to take the J1s back to the resort or whatnot, or on that route, he was charging them $10. And so if they didn't pay, they were stuck on the side of the road at 1:30 in the morning. Seriously. And so they came back in. They did call, the bartender did call the police actually. And they came back, so the couple of the customers came back in, and then the bartender called the police and was like, hey, like this person's charging $10. It's a free bus. Yada, yada. And they did it again the next week.
What stop was it, Katie?
The one on Fraser Avenue, right by the bar. $10. And they don't really speak English that well. So they're going like this. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? And he doesn't know where to take a card. So these people don't have cash,
It's for people living at the
It's
resort.
like stranding them on the side of the road.
Wow. This was for
And I do
people
have
living-
the bus driver's first name too.
This is for people. And I'll get that from you after the meeting. This is for people living at the resort, you said?
Yeah,
I'm
pretty sure that was the reason. Where they live.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to narrow it down.
Stranded because they don't have $10.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. No, we'll check it out, Katie, and
Spend it all at your bar.
tell me after the meeting when you got it.
Oh,
You got it.
And I did, when I saw the list, I did email them, I guess you could say email, but it was through Facebook Messenger from my bar for the list, and they said, we'll get in contact with you in May.
Okay.
Wow,
Yeah, we'll definitely.
that's terrible.
check it out.
Yeah.
So, speaking of nighttime activities, Mr. Lipscomb, I'm talking about nighttime activities. And I was informed that I had some friends that went to the movies last Friday night, and there were people working at your construction zone at 9 o'clock at night with a lift, putting stuff on the roof and putting stuff inside. And it was dark and cold. So don't think that's very safe.
Well, at least there's some progress going, for Christ's sakes.
Well, why don't they do it during the day when we can see it?
Hallelujah, they got stuff on the roof.
They were loading the TPO on the roof to finish the roof on the south
There-
building.
there were
They
a-
got delivered that day.
There were a lot of, I don't know if you were by there during the day, there were like 5 semis that day.
Probably.
Unloading roofing materials to the roof. For the one building, the other building's done. Probably a lot of materials, and I expect that they probably worked long and hard to get it up there, so.
Well, just maybe.
I-
Good
I-
idea.
I was not here, so I apologize for the inconvenience.
Well, I don't think it's an inconvenience. I just think it's a safety
I'll teach the workers when we get them now.
Any other updates?
I'll just share real quick as well that we have a number of businesses that are going to be offering promotions to Ski Train and Amtrak passengers. So I'm working with Sarah Wick, and we're going to hopefully roll out marketing for that either end of this week or by next week. So look out for that.
Make a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thanks, everybody.
We talked about